Franklin Delano Roosevelt, 1882-1945, is often regarded as one of the most transformative presidents in American history. Serving as the 32nd President of the United States from 1933 until his death in 1945, Roosevelt led the country through two of its most significant crises, the Great Depression and World War II. His policies reshaped the U.S. government and had lasting impacts on the American economy, society, and role in the world. This essay explores Roosevelt's early life, political career, leadership during the Great Depression and World War II, and his enduring legacy. Franklin D. Roosevelt was born into a wealthy family on January 30th, 1882, in Hyde Park, New York. He was the only child of James Roosevelt Warren and Sarah Delano Roosevelt, who were both from prominent families. His privileged upbringing afforded him an elite education, including time at prestigious schools like Groton and Harvard University. Roosevelt's early exposure to power and privilege, combined with his natural charisma and intelligence, would serve him well in his political career. After graduating from Harvard in 1903, Roosevelt briefly attended Columbia Law School, but dropped out in 1907. Instead, he entered public service, starting as a law clerk for a New York City law firm. However, he quickly became involved in politics. He was elected to the New York State Senate in 1910 as a Democrat, aligning with the progressive wing of the party. His political rise was swift, and by 1913, he was appointed Assistant Secretary of the Navy under President Woodrow Wilson. Roosevelt's career trajectory seemed bright, but in 1921, at the age of 39, he was struck by polio, which left him permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Though this was a devastating blow, it did not end his political ambitions. Roosevelt's determination to overcome the effects of polio and his ability to project confidence and strength to the public were key to his future success. Roosevelt's political comeback began in 1928 when he was elected governor of New York. During his two terms as governor, 1929-1932, Roosevelt developed a reputation for progressive policies that aimed to alleviate the hardships of the Great Depression. He implemented state-level reforms to provide relief to farmers, workers, and the unemployed, including public works projects, labor laws, and reforms in the banking sector. His success as governor helped propel him into the national spotlight, and in 1932, Roosevelt was elected President of the United States. He defeated the incumbent Herbert Hoover, whose presidency had been marked by the deepening economic collapse of the Great Depression. Roosevelt's victory was a repudiation of Hoover's policies and an endorsement of his own vision for a more active federal government. The United States entered the Great Depression in the late 1920s, and by the time Roosevelt assumed office in March 1933, the nation was in the midst of its worst economic crisis in history. Unemployment had reached 25%, the banking system had collapsed, and industrial production had fallen by nearly half. The economic hardships faced by millions of Americans called for bold and innovative action. Roosevelt's response to the Depression was the New Deal, a series of programs and reforms designed to provide relief, recovery, and reform. His first 100 days in office, from March to June 1933, was a period of intense legislative activity. Roosevelt pushed through Congress a series of major initiatives, including the Emergency Banking Relief Act, 1933. This legislation temporarily closed all banks and allowed only solvent ones to reopen, restoring public confidence in the banking system. The Civilian Conservation Corps, CCC. A public works program that employed young men in environmental projects, such as reforestation, flood control, and park maintenance. The Agricultural Adjustment Act, AAA. Aimed at raising agricultural prices by paying farmers to reduce crop production and livestock herds. The National Industrial Recovery Act, NIRA. Created the National Recovery Administration, NRA, which set industry-wide codes for fair wages, hours, and prices to stimulate economic recovery. The New Deal continued to evolve through Roosevelt's presidency, introducing programs such as Social Security, 1935, which established a federal safety net for the elderly and unemployed, and the Fair Labor Standards Act, 1938, which set minimum wage and overtime laws. While the New Deal helped provide relief to millions of Americans, it was not without controversy. Critics from both the left and the right argued that Roosevelt's policies expanded government power too much and were inefficient or ineffective. Despite these criticisms, Roosevelt remained deeply committed to government intervention in the economy, believing that it was the federal government's responsibility to protect its citizens and restore prosperity. As the Great Depression began to ease, Roosevelt was faced with another massive global crisis: World War II. The war in Europe began in 1939 when Germany, under Adolf Hitler, invaded Poland. Roosevelt initially sought to keep the United States neutral, reflecting the widespread isolationist sentiment in the country. However, as the Axis powers, Germany, Italy, and Japan, expanded their control across Europe and Asia, Roosevelt became increasingly concerned about the threat they posed to global democracy and the stability of the international order. In 1940, Roosevelt was re-elected to a third term, becoming the first president to serve more than 2 terms. By 1941, he had shifted toward greater support for the Allied powers, particularly Britain and the Soviet Union. He provided them with material assistance through the Lend-Lease Act, which allowed the U.S. to send arms and supplies to nations fighting Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan without formally entering the war. The United States was drawn into the conflict after Japan's surprise attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Roosevelt responded by declaring war on Japan the following day. Germany and Italy, allied with Japan, declared war on the United States, bringing the U.S. into the global conflict on both the European and Pacific fronts. During the war, Roosevelt's leadership was instrumental in organizing the war effort and forging alliances with Britain and the Soviet Union. He played a key role in strategic military decisions and in shaping the post-war world. Roosevelt's diplomatic efforts culminated in the establishment of the United Nations, an international organization designed to prevent future conflicts and promote global cooperation. Roosevelt's handling of World War II is often praised for his ability to balance the demands of military strategy with the needs of the American public. He led the country through the war with a combination of pragmatism and idealism, maintaining domestic unity and ensuring that the U.S. emerged as a global superpower by the end of the conflict. Franklin D. Roosevelt passed away on April 12, 1945, just months before the end of World War II. His death marked the end of an era in American history, and his influence on the country endures to this day. Roosevelt's leadership during the Great Depression and World War II solidified the role of the federal government as an active force in American life. The New Deal reforms continue to shape the social and economic landscape of the U.S., and his vision for a post-war international order laid the groundwork for the global system that emerged after 1945. Roosevelt's presidency was not without its flaws. His attempts to expand the power of the executive branch, such as his failed court-packing plan in 1937, were criticized as overreach. Additionally, Roosevelt's treatment of racial minorities, particularly African Americans, was often slow to evolve, and his internment of Japanese Americans during World War II remains one of the darkest chapters of his presidency. Nonetheless, Roosevelt's enduring legacy lies in his ability to guide the nation through some of its most perilous times. His leadership qualities, visionary, pragmatic, empathetic, and unyielding in the face of adversity, continue to inspire leaders and citizens alike. Roosevelt not only reshaped American politics and government, but he also redefined the nation's relationship with the rest of the world, establishing the United States as a central actor on the global stage. In sum, Franklin D. Roosevelt's presidency was marked by an unwavering commitment to public service and a determination to confront the greatest challenges of his time. His impact on American society and the world is unparalleled, and his legacy as a transformative leader endures in the policies, institutions, and ideals that continue to shape modern America. All right, that's it for today's video. Please continue enjoying the rest of the real footage of Franklin D. Roosevelt. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did making it. If you did, make sure to hit that like button. It's a small click, but it really helps the channel grow. And if you're new here, don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss out on future videos.